Thank you so much. Well, as Doug mentioned, engineering has gone global. There was a time when American engineering sort of dominated global engineering, but that's not really the case anymore. If you look at the percentage of degrees in other countries that are awarded in engineering, you'll find that they're much higher in other parts of the world. So for example, in Asia, 40% of all the college degrees that are awarded in engineering. In fact, you'll notice that in Asia, many of the political leaders actually have degrees in engineering. In Europe, that number's 12%. In the US, only 4.5% of the degrees that are awarded in engineering. So we're sort of being out-graduated by the rest of the world. So it's no surprise then to find that our global innovation competitiveness is beginning to be adversely impacted. We're no longer number one. We're not even in the top 5. In fact, there are a number of countries below us that are poised to overtake us. Now why does this matter? In the last several years, more than 40% of all the new jobs that have been created by low-wage employers like Walmart and McDonald's. Now, I don't think this is the kind of economic future that we want to leave for our children. If we're going to be able to compete globally, we've got to educate more engineers, and we've got to educate them in a way that's different from the way we've educated them in the past, as Doug alluded to. Most of the engineers in this country are educated in the large public institutions, of which UF is one. If we're going to change this situation, if we're going to address this problem, the University of Florida has to be part of the solution. We are the 6th largest producer of engineering degrees in the country last year. 1.5% of all the engineers in the country that got degrees last year got them from our college. So we need to be part of the solution to help restore American competitiveness through engineering education and research. And when I first became dean, we talked to a lot of our constituents, employers, alumni, students, and we asked them what skills would an engineer have to possess to be successful in the 21st century? So a lot of the words we heard back are things you expect to hear about an engineer. Intelligence, technical excellence, competence. But a lot of what we heard was different from the way we've traditionally educated engineers. We heard a lot of attributes associated with innovation, creativity, globally minded. We're a very global, interconnected world, as Doug said. Entrepreneurial, forward-looking. A lot of words that focus around innovation and creativity. And even more surprising were the words that we heard that are related to leadership, communication, trustworthiness, integrity, ethics, team building. Not the kinds of attributes that you have normally attributed to your stereotypical engineer, although I will tell you that if you go out and look at the successful engineering leaders, people like Doug and others, you'll find that they have these attributes. I think in many cases, though, they didn't have those attributes because of what we did at the University of Florida. They learned them after they got out. If we're going to be successful as a nation, we can't wait that long. We need to have those attributes. We need to have the students with those attributes at the time of graduation. A number of our employers call this workforce ready. Our students need to be ready to hit the ground running as soon as they leave our campus. So we call this intersection of leadership, innovation, and interdisciplinary education and research the new engineer. Some people refer to it as the T-shaped engineer, technically deep, but with the broad social skills to succeed and excel in a globally connected, very complex 21st century economy. So our goal is to create students who embody this symbol of the new engineer. Now to do this, you have to change the way you approach engineering education and research. And by the way, it's not just the students. A lot of the faculty that we're recruiting want this kind of environment as well. And this is the kind of faculty that will be successful. So we're trying to change our culture and our curriculum to be much more interdisciplinary and dynamic, focused on innovation and discovery. And by the way, we're trying to get people to see, as I'll talk in a few minutes, how important it is to have impact on the world. So we're trying to encourage faculty and students to transition their ideas into the marketplace faster than ever before. We're trying to get students to understand that the way to succeed in engineering is to focus on solving a particular problem or trying to create a particular or fill a particular need. If you focus on the needs of the consumer or the customer or the client, you're much more likely to come up with a solution that has impact in the real world. Very often, I hate to say this, but engineers, we like our toys a lot, so we tend to focus on creating a brand new widget. Sometimes nobody wants that widget, and you go out of business, so we're trying to get them to understand that before they get too far down the path. We're trying to infuse our curriculum with leadership training, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And in particular, we're trying to do some of the same things that you've done in your businesses. We want to use technology to help improve the way we deliver our educational environment to our students. And I realize you can't see all the numbers here. I just put this up to show you, this is a visual representation of our strategic plan. We've done some strategic planning at the college and department levels. We picked big thematic areas that we feel are important to the state, to our profession, and to the country, and to the entire world for that matter. We focus on areas associated with healthcare, security, sustainability, enabling technologies, and we're also very focused on building tomorrow's leaders in the economy. We've come back and done departmental strategic planning, and you've probably heard about the preeminence thrust. We're doing a lot of hiring into these areas that you see here. And we're doing this in a way that encourages people to work across boundaries. We're trying to blur the artificial boundaries between disciplines. Most of the problems we want to work on are very complex and require a number of people and a number of different disciplines. So we're trying to find ways to encourage people to do that because we'll think we'll be more successful at achieving impact and finding novel solutions. So we do actually have a plan for how we're going to incorporate this. Part of our plan is to create a culture which is infused with innovation and leadership. And the way we went about doing that was to create two institutes, one focused on engineering education, or engineering leadership, and one on engineering innovation. We have two outstanding directors. Our Innovation Institute is headed up by Eric Sander. This institute teaches curricula in entrepreneurship, creativity, and entrepreneurship. We have had a number of student companies formed in the classes. They actually have to make a business plan as part of their final project. And 5 or 6 of those have actually turned into real companies, many of them now in the Gainesville community. So again, this goes back to wanting to create a culture which is vibrant and encourages economic development. The Leadership Institute, we just recently appointed our founding director. It's Lieutenant General Buster Hagenbeck, who lives in Jacksonville, by the way. He is the former superintendent of West Point, a retired 3-star general. We have found that the military has done some great work in learning how to instill leadership characteristics or hone leadership skills, and so we're trying to learn from some of that. But we're also trying to learn from what industry has developed in terms of leadership. I'll talk more about the Leadership Institute in a moment. I just want to point out that part of the reason we think we have the opportunity to be an innovative institution is because we have a foundation to build on. We're already more innovative than many of our counterparts. We have produced, over the last several years, startups at 5 times the national average given our research base. We produce inventions at twice the national average. I think it's important that we begin to understand universities, particularly land-grant universities, as partners with the state in generating economic development and high-wage jobs. We have been very active in helping the state recruit industry to the state of Florida. We often work with the city of Jacksonville to try to recruit industry. We're working with other parts of the state. We feel like as a land-grant institution, it is our job to partner with municipalities and other representatives around the state to recruit industry. And we feel like the Innovation Institute can help us do that more effectively. So we feel like we've really stepped up and become a much better partner to help the communities in this state. Skip over that one. Now I want to talk for a little bit about leadership. We have talked to a number of thought leaders around the country. We surveyed the landscape in terms of leadership training programs around the country, and as Doug said, we found that this was an area that was grossly underserved by engineering colleges around the country, and that this could be a real differentiator for our students and our faculty. And that's borne out by some of the national thought leaders that we've asked to help us develop the plan for this institute. Norm Augustine is a member of the advisory board for our Leadership Institute. He's the former chair of the National Academy of Engineering, former CEO of Lockheed Martin. Has no connection to the University of Florida except for the fact he was so intrigued and so interested in what we were trying to do in engineering leadership development that he signed on to help us get this off the ground and functioning. As Doug said, there aren't very many leadership programs in engineering around the country, and I feel like we've very quickly become at the forefront of that movement. You are beginning to see, though, more of these things popping up now. You'll see other institutions. Ours is a little bit unique because we are trying to infuse leadership throughout the entire college. That means undergrad curricula at all levels, grad curricula, and faculty. We've been doing more leadership training for faculty than ever before. And in fact, I want to thank some of you for giving me advice on how to do that. We're trying to copy some of the talent management and leadership development that industry has done, and it's been a tremendous role models for us to follow. So we are getting a lot of national attention for this. One of the great things about the Leadership Institute is that we've been able to bring great leaders in front of our students. There are many ways you can teach leadership, but there's no substitute for bringing great leaders in front of your students and letting them sit and talk to them and learn about their experiences. And these great leaders have been terrific in talking about both their failures and their successes. And one of the things we've learned from these great leaders is if you never fail, you're probably not dreaming big enough and you're not taking big enough calculated risks, and that's been a real good lesson for our students. So we want our graduates to be sought out by other institutions as future leaders. One of the things that companies now look at when they decide where to recruit from, how well do your students rise through the ranks as a function of where we recruit from? And those institutions that produce graduates that are rising quickly into leadership positions are the ones they come back to. Because of those kinds of factors, we are now one of the most recruited schools in the country. We're number 3 on Intel's list, we're number 3 with Lockheed Martin, and we're number 1 with ExxonMobil. So I do think this is beginning to pay off, and I think it's an important part of distinguishing the University of Florida from the competition and distinguishing our graduates. One of the interesting things about 21st century engineering is that because we're adding in these other elements of communications and what have you, it's becoming viewed as more than just a narrow technical degree. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that engineering has become a great degree for success in just about any field. More Fortune 500 CEOs have undergrad degrees in engineering than any other major, including business. And the reason is because it teaches you the analytical thinking, the creative problem solving that helps you succeed in just about any walk of life. One of the goals that we have in engineering is to get other students to see that this is in fact a great preparation for any subsequent career, whether it's business, law, medicine. We think it's a great partnership with just about any professional school. And you'll often find there's actually some interesting data. If you look at the scores on pre-professional exams like MCATs and LSATs, the engineers typically are at the very top end of the score distributions. So most med schools love to have engineers. The quality of the students actually increases. Most business schools love to have engineers. So any of you students, if you haven't gotten your engineering degree yet, we'll be more than happy to talk to you about But one of my particular passions, and this comes back to the public policy, one area that we haven't had as much success in populating with engineers is public policy and public service. There are, as far as I can remember, there are 3 engineers in the Florida legislature. There are 11 in the U.S. House, and I don't think there are any engineers. I think there's 1 West Point grad in the Senate, and West Point typically requires a fairly extensive training in engineering, but no other engineers in the U.S. Senate. There was one, he was from Delaware, and he retired a few years ago. And to me, this is a real loss for the country, because I do think engineers bring a particular perspective on problem solving that could be really helpful to some of the debates that go on in Congress. I also think a lot of the issues that are confronting state and local and federal government today are very technological in nature. And having people at the table when these decisions get made who have some grounding in the technology, I think would help the legislatures to make more informed decisions. When I first started talking about engineers as public servants or getting engaged in public policy, people would laugh and say, yeah, right. But actually, if you sit and look at it, it makes a lot of sense. One thing I've found is that the students that are coming into our university now are much more public-spirited and civic-minded than the students were when I first went to college. Most of the kids that we're getting now really want to make a difference. They want to have impact on the world. They want to have a job that's more than just a paycheck. They want to make a difference. You combine that with the kind of new engineers that we're graduating, which are technically excellent, but also which have the grounding in ethics and persuasive communications that we're trying to give them in our college. You put all this together, and then you look at the needs of 21st century society. I think all of us would agree we need creative problem solvers who want to make the world a better place, who are willing to invest their careers in public service or public policy. And I think you can see that could be a very powerful, could be a very powerful partnership see if I can get back here. There. So I just wanted to end. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about where we're headed with our program or where we might go together. But I think there ought to be some opportunities for our Leadership Institute or our college to work with some of your programs here. I would particularly like to see students who are getting bachelor's degrees in our institution pursue some sort of certificate or master's degree or some other sort of continuing program in public policy, perhaps with an eye toward making this a partnership that results in a pipeline of analytically trained public servants or public policy experts. And we work with the Graham Center at the University of Florida, but they're not a degree-granting institution. But we've had great success in bringing in joint seminar speakers with them. We've had a lot of opportunities to co-host visitors to campus who have an interest in both engineering and public policy. So I'd be interested in exploring if there's opportunities for us to work together, because I do think what you're doing here is terrific, and I think sorely needed. I really think that there's a great need for well-trained experts in public policy and public service. So with that, I was just going to stop and try to open up a dialogue perhaps about what opportunities there might be for us to work together, or if you have any questions about where we're trying to head as a college, the goals we're trying to achieve. One thing I did forget to mention, we don't require the leadership training. We're putting some of it into various classes, but the certificate and the courses the students have to take in addition to the regular program. We've had over 700 students voluntarily take this program. There is a hunger for this. I think the students see it as valuable. The employers see it as valuable. And that to me says that this is the right time to be offering this kind of program. So with that, I would just like to open it up and see if there's any questions. Yes?
Engineering is still doing less in terms of hours to get people out, and yet you want to do more, all these ethics. And you just said that, this is all additional. Any engineering student is working 24 hours a day, and how are you cramming stuff in there more to get all these ethics and non-engineering related things? We were challenged to even get them to budge on any course.
That's a great comment. And very often when we start talking about these kind of topics, people say, oh, so you're going to water down the technical degree. Let me just reassure you, we're not watering down the technical degree. One thing that has helped is the advent of technology. There are certain things that engineering students used to have to do that were very time consuming. Fortran cards, everybody talks about Fortran. Drafting, mechanical drafting. Well, we have computers that do all that now. So some of that has been relieved by technology. Some of these concepts can be put into existing engineering classes. Everybody has to do capstone design. Why not do capstone design with part of the design has to deal with ethics? Make the students communicate about their design. Make them do an oral presentation on the design. In some of the freshman classes, introduce these kinds of elements. So there are ways to sneak it into the curriculum to achieve these kind of student learning outcomes. But I will also tell you, our students, yes, they work very hard, but they also they understand everybody else is working very hard too, and they want to stand out. And so they are selecting to take these kinds of classes. Same is true of the innovation classes, entrepreneurship, etc. We are about to make our communications and ethics class required of every TA in the college. And the departments want this. They want their PhD grads to have a solid grounding in ethics and communication. About half of our PhD students come from other countries. And there's obviously a significant conversation about what constitutes plagiarism in one culture versus another, what constitutes a bribe versus a gift in one culture versus another. And we've never really tried to step up and educate the rest of the world about what our view on ethical practice is. So this is an opportunity, again, for us to do something different than the rest of the world and really have our graduates understand where those bright lines are. Now, a lot of ethics, people tell me ethics is inborn. Sometimes people get into ethical problems because they don't have the honed radar to understand when they're on a slippery slope. Norm Augustine gave a very good example of this when he gave a seminar on our campus, and he said he'd known a lot of high-profile CEOs that went to jail. He said most of them were good people. They just didn't have the sense to notice when they were all the way halfway down the slippery slope, and then it was too late. It was too late to extract themselves. So we want to give them that kind of internal gyroscope. So yes, our students are busy, but they see this as really important, and they're opting to choose for this. And a lot of what we do in the Leadership and Innovation Institutes isn't in the classroom. Like I said, we bring great leaders in. One of the favorite things that people do when they come to our campus to give a seminar, we have a breakfast with our student leaders. They love it. The students love it. the visitors love it. There's lots of opportunities to instill this message. I'm always amazed at the power of the bully pulpit in a university. What you talk about becomes what you are, and I suspect the same is true in industry as well. But as we've talked more and more about leadership and innovation, you start to see people now embrace this as, of course, this is what is expected of me. And then we've started holding up student leaders who exemplify these attributes so that the students now have role models to follow, and that's become quite a successful program. So that's my answer to that. It's a lot of work, but there's still an opportunity to embrace these kinds of skills. Yes?
There are a lot of gates on that residency programs and take a long time to clear. What's the gate that holds back from graduating more engineers, not only at the University of Florida, but in, around the country?
Well, so there's several parts to this. One is recruiting and the other is retention. So let me deal with the retention first. We bring in 1,200 or 1,300 students every year at the University of Florida who say they want to be engineers. We graduate about half those as engineers. Now, the first thing everybody assumes is these people are lazy or they can't do the work. There's a small subset of that, but there are a lot of students who, by the time they get through Calc 1, 2, and 3, Diffie-Q, Chem 1 and 2, Physics 1 and 2, they think that's what engineering is and they don't want any part of it. So they go off and do something else. The challenge for us is to put engineering programs in the freshman year that are human-centered, that are focused around design, that give them an opportunity to work in teams, and let them see that engineering is more than just doing proofs and derivatives and those kinds of things. I think we can get our retention up significantly, and that's pretty low-hanging fruit. Those are some great students that are already on our campus, and we're trying to put some programs in place to do that. The Innovation Institute would be a part of that. Then the other part is recruiting. We haven't done as much K through 12 outreach in the last few years because of the budget cuts, but I do think there's an opportunity for us to sort of expand that pipeline going forward. If you look at where the pools of talent are, it's primarily women and underrepresented minorities because they have traditionally been underrepresented in engineering relative to the rest of the campus. And we are beginning to see in our college some improvement in that. The national participation of women in engineering at undergraduate programs nationally is declining. It peaked at about 20%, it's now about 18 or 19%. In our college, it's 25%, and the freshman class was 30%. So we're actually bucking the trend. There are, and the retention for women is roughly about the same as it is for men. I think a lot of that has to do with having women faculty. If you have people that the students can identify with, they're more likely to go into the profession. We have more programs to support women, student support programs. We're doing a better job of talking about what engineers actually do, and what engineers actually do is make the world a better place. We don't go off in a corner and work by ourselves and live in cubicles. I think if Doug would tell you, all the engineers here would tell you, if you can't communicate, you're not going to be effective as an engineer in the 21st century. Same thing with underrepresented minorities. I think we focus on the pipeline in, which is important, but we've also got to focus on the faculty, because if we have role models, more people will choose to major in engineering. And so we're trying to do that in our college. We've increased the numbers of Hispanic, African American, and women faculty over the last 5 years in spite of the budget cuts. We need to do more of that, but to me, that's the key. There's certain kinds of bridge programs that we know are successful for all students. It's just a resource issue. We've been fortunate over the last year or two, corporations have been stepping up to help us pay for those kinds of programs. As the state support went away, those programs would have gone away if it hadn't been for our corporate sponsors, and it's been terrific to help us expand those programs. There is a new program which we started with Santa Fe College, which is it used to be a community college, now it's a four-year college, but it's the big community college in Gainesville. We call it Gator Engineering at Santa Fe, and I'm really excited because this is the way we've chosen to expand enrollment in engineering. The University of Florida gets a tremendous number of applicants. A lot of them are admissible, but there's not room on campus in math, chemistry, and physics, so we deny them. What the university has now let us do, they'll let us go into this admissible pool that they don't have room for, and let us pick the students that we think would be successful in our high demand majors. Not mechanical, because we're overrun with mechanical, but computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering, and now we've added materials and nuclear. And those students spend one semester as a Santa Fe student, and as long as they make their grades, just like we would expect any campus student, they automatically become UF students the next semester. They spend 2 more semesters taking their math, chemistry, and physics at Santa Fe, but while they're there, we start teaching them design and engineering economy, and they start taking classes from us. They're part of our student societies, and then after 3 semesters, they just come on campus like everyone else. So we had 32 students last fall. We think we're probably going to have between 50 and 60 this fall. Our goal is to eventually increase it to 200 or 300 students, or however many Santa Fe will let us have, and as long as we have capacity. So this is kind of a unique approach now. It's a unique partnership between a community college and UF that I think will really help us begin to increase in those majors where we have capacity and where employers are absolutely begging us to produce more students. And then the other part is just capacity. You know, we're scalable. You add more faculty and more lab space, we can add more students. But in some majors, we have just reached our limits. Mechanical and aerospace engineering is now the largest department at the University of Florida. They have over 1,500 undergrads. So if I ask them to take more students, they're going to kill me. So got to slow down a little bit there, unless we can expand their program. Now, I will tell you this, though. You look around the country. Purdue's adding 100 engineering faculty. Texas A&M is going to double their engineering college to 25,000 students by 2025. That's their goal. We have 242 faculty in engineering right now. Georgia Tech has over 400. Purdue's going to go over 400. Michigan's over 300. Illinois is over 400. The rest of the country is really trying to ramp up their engineering program. So it's not like the rest of the world is standing still. We're about to add 30 thanks to the state's preeminence initiative. So we can expand some, but everybody's woken up to the fact that engineering is not only a great major to produce students who can get jobs, but it's a driver of economic development. Wherever you find a real high-tech hotbed, Silicon Valley, Austin, Boston, you look, there is a really strong college of engineering nearby. And we've got one, and we're starting to take advantage of it. Now you're starting to see more industry in North Central Florida and spin-offs and recruiting of companies. So like I said, I think we may not be Silicon Valley, but we can do pretty good. So, yes?
I was very pleased to see that the first line of the attributes of engineers was ethics, second order, and also you brought it up several times. I wanted to ask you 2 things. One is biomedical engineering, biomedical technology is one of our growth industries, and we do compete fairly well in the world in that. And you're in the middle of a major health science center in the world as well. And secondly, this is the 60th anniversary of the Declaration of Helsinki, which was passed by the medical associations of the world because of what physicians did in Japan and Germany in World War II. So the ethics of human experimentation were in that document and here to most of the world. How do you handle that in your courses, and how do engineers handle ethics in general, and how do you handle it in biomedical research?
Well, so let me deal with the research side first. We have several entities on campus that review any research that involves humans. That's true if you're an engineer or a physician. And we have another committee that involves research on animals. So those committees are very thorough, and there's a high degree of regulation. And I think we have a pretty good reputation for running a very clean shop in that regard. Now, we require training of our faculty in various aspects of research. Some of it is dealing with human subjects, some of it is dealing with federal contracts and grants, and we have a number of mandatory training sessions in those regards. So on the research front, I think we have a pretty thorough process. Now, the way we incorporate ethics in the other programs is, as I said, we have a class at the undergrad level and a class at the grad level. The undergrad class is required in certain majors. In fact, civil is one of the majors that requires this class in ethics. The grad class, we're about to make it required of TAs and probably all PhD students eventually. And in this class, we do a couple of things. We have gotten our industrial colleagues to give us case studies that we can then, so the real world case studies, sanitized so that we can protect the guilty, but they review those. And then we bring people in from industry or national labs to talk to them about the importance of ethics and different aspects of ethics, and they cover ethics from a sort of a classical theoretical viewpoint all the way to the very pragmatic. And I think, and we're trying to incorporate it now, like I said, into capstone design, so that one of your design considerations is, where does this fall in terms of standards, in terms of impact? Sometimes they'll throw in a wrinkle and say, well, now we're going to do this. What do? Do you report it? So that sort of thing. So try to give them a little bit of a practice in the classroom. So that's, yes?
There's a big disconnect between what the kids are learning in high school and translating that into when they get to university. I know there's a big focus on STEM programs and other things like that. But would you think it'll be better, how successful are those programs, or do you think it'll be better if you had a more focused training on sciences at an earlier age instead of intertwining it with everything else as they go along? Like,
That's a really good question. And if you look at engineering, and I'm just going to speak to engineering, the key thing is math. If you don't take algebra in the 8th grade, you're already behind the 8 ball, and it's hard to catch up. So we actually have programs that are aimed at trying to get middle school parents and counselors to understand, make sure these kids stay on track in math through middle school. The other thing we're trying to do is to develop programs, and we have some, and we're working with some other partners. In fact, we had a conversation with a company in Jacksonville just this week. They want to partner with us on trying to increase participation of women in IT-related majors. And the key is in middle school to get the women who have the potential to go into a technical field to continue to take the math they need to be in position to do that. A lot of social pressure on girls in middle school. So to me, that's one of the keys. The other thing is, so we have an outstanding associate dean for undergraduate student affairs who also handles our K-12 outreach. Her name is Angela Lindner. And she is developing a sort of soup to nuts approach to this, that with the idea that eventually some of these kids will get into college, and then my goal is to eventually have some of them become faculty in engineering so that we could have a real holistic. Until we had this Gator Engineering at Santa Fe program, we really didn't have any place to take them. So we could help the schools coach them up through K through 12, but then we can't take them. But now with the Gator Engineering at Santa Fe, we can say, okay, here's the benchmarks. If you meet these benchmarks, if you go through this program, we'll give you preference to get into this program. We call this, the high school program is called the Gator Engineering Apprenticeship Program, and Angela's going to be working with high schools that are currently underrepresented in the UF population. And that could be because of socioeconomic status, location, race, gender, what have you. And that gives us an opportunity then to take those kids and build their skills up and keep them interested so that they'll keep taking those classes and eventually get into the University of Florida. So that's kind of the approach we've been taking. You know, I'm the mother of a 14-year-old son, and he goes to a private school actually, but even I'm just dismayed at the quality of science education. It's just boring. I mean, I love science, and I'm bored watching him study. It's just horrible. So I do think we need to change science education, but the truth is, you can have lousy science instruction and still pass college science, but you can't get by without the math, because once you get so far behind on math, you just can't get, you know. There are some, we're actually working with Santa Fe to develop what we call pre-engineering, so kids who come out of high schools unprepared for a regular Calc 1 or Calc 2 have a sequence that they can take. I don't want to call it remedial. It's not really remedial. It's just they got to have that bridge program, so that if in case they didn't stay on track or they didn't get the kind of education they need, there's a place where they could still get that and then hop into our Gator Engineering at Santa Fe program. So I think you're going to have some bridge programs like that to make it possible. But I see more interest in engineering than people realize. I think once they get past middle school is just an awful time, especially for young women in terms of staying focused. There is a lot more interest in STEM than you saw 10 years ago. And I don't know if it's the economy. I think there's been a lot more attention paid to STEM, and that's probably helped. I think it's a combination of things. So yes. Obviously, I agree with you. I think that there's wonderful opportunities for collaboration. I don't know of too many places that have linked engineering and public policy in a sort of formal way. So I think there's an opportunity to do something unique there. You mentioned that engineering came late to the leadership. It's interesting. If you go back every 10 years or so, the National Academy of Engineering does a study on the state of engineering education, where we need to go in the future. The first one was in the 50s. It was called the Grinter Report. It was chaired by a faculty at the University of Florida named L.E. Grinter. That report said, okay, engineers need to study math, chemistry, and physics, and they need the broad social skills, including leadership, to be successful. That was in the 50s. We ignored it in the 50s. They said it again in the 60s. They said it again in the 80s. They said it again in the 90s. Finally, when we got to the aughts, I said, maybe we should pay attention to these people. They've been telling us for 50 years we need to be leaders. I do think you're beginning to see, there's been a reawakening in the last couple of years in particular. I'm seeing leadership initiatives popping up in engineering colleges all over the place. Part of it, too, I think, is if you look around the world, engineers are leaders. I mentioned in China, most of the leaders have engineering degrees because they view technology to be their prime civic driver. There are a lot of engineers as leaders in Europe. It's, for some reason in this country, maybe Herbert Hoover turned everybody off. They said, we've had enough engineers, I don't know. Hopefully this next generation would do better, but thank you.